Welcome back to the 2 Months podcast and Happy New Year to everyone and all our listeners, all our sponsors. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall. We have a very special guest with us. He is the first guest of 2024. He is a two-time Stanley Cup champion, longtime executive in the National Hockey League. And you can find him on Sportsnet 590 with Kipper and Bourne and all the other great channels that they have there. We have Mike Futa back with us. Futes, how's it going?
Let's just get this out of the way right away, my friend. Here, first of all,
Okay.
you always throw all these accolades about myself and my thing. So let's get this. First of all, Happy New Year. And secondly, congratulations on achieving the next step of your dream, buddy. That's when I saw that, I could just feel your internal happiness. And to finally, like a kid in a candy shop with your new position and getting your press pass with the Calgary Flames and stuff. And I could just picture you in that media scrum, just with your feet not even on the ground.
Yeah, it was
Good for you, bud. I remember I got in trouble in Calgary. I didn't know all the little rules that go with the National Hockey League about when you're your opponent. So first, I screwed up twice. First time I come out, so we go into Calgary. And it's my first road trip in management. So Calgary's having their morning skate, and I fire right out onto the bench to have a chat with Gio. And then I realize you're not allowed to be on the bench when I get told it's a huge fine if the visiting team management goes on the bench. Well, the other team's practicing, which, okay. And then little do I know. So then I go down to the Calgary dressing room and it's open. So I go in and they're having the press scrum and there's like 15 guys around Gio's stall. So I sit in the back and I start asking questions about his ball hockey career. And then I find out that it's an even bigger fine if management goes into the visiting team's dressing room without credit. So anyways, you learn all these lessons as you become this massive media star in the press thing. But congratulations again, buddy. I could feel your passion and your happiness, and I was very proud of you.
Yeah, no, I know I didn't, so I apologize. I didn't tag you in the tweet, but at the end of the day, Futes, if anyone out of all these people I've got to know through the circuit of the hockey community, huge stick taps for you for showing belief in me, because not only in that terms of feeling comfortable to come on this podcast and talk to me, you set us up with like the Trevor Lewises and the Justin Williams and the Tyler Toffolis and the Milan Lucic's, all these guys. These are the Rolodexes that you've helped us out in gaining credibility. So I appreciate all the efforts you've done there for us.
My pleasure. It's well worth it.
Yeah, no,
I don't know what that meant. Luch and I were one of your, or sorry, Biss.
And then Biz too. We had Biz that was, as we ever.
I'm going to take credit for you. I'm going to take credit for that massive rating.
Yes. Yeah, that was.
I'm sure there were people that are actually tuning in for Biss.
But I think you added a great component to it for sure. But yeah, it was. There was a lot of emotions to it. The thing was, this was a possibility last year. I could not find it in me at all to get into that situation. I don't know. I had no confidence. Didn't have the courage to do it. The Flames have been like amazing to me in the last 3-4 years. Like, I cannot thank Peter Hanlon and Sean Kelso and the rest of that staff. And obviously, Tree better than I do, but I've had one dealing in my entire life with Brad Tree Living, and it was a moment of empathy and compassion and everything he's done for me. And he's off to bigger and better things right now with the Leafs. He's got a bigger thing to take care of. Not that he didn't have a big thing to take care of in Calgary, but Calgary to Toronto is a different animal in its own right. But yeah, it was pretty sweet, and just kind of chatting with some of the media horde there and stuff like that. They're all very nice, very easygoing. Emotional, because Christmas morning was not the best, and obviously December 23rd is a tough day for me. It's the anniversary of my dad's passing, and then I got some real bad news on Christmas morning, and so I've had a rough go. And the unfortunate part is this was a great opportunity for me, and I haven't been able to share it with someone that I love the most. And hopefully, I know that person listens to this podcast, so maybe in the way that this is the way I can share how it is. But yeah, so love that person with my entire heart, and yeah, so Yeah, we'll enjoy this journey though, Futes. It was pretty cool, and obviously I'll be back there. And had a really good chat with Michael Backlund last night on doing some things with him in the near future. So the possibility for new opportunities is there.
Win or lose.
The Flames won, so that was good. It was a tough one. We ended up they were up pretty good there. They came back. I think they're up 4-2. And then we got in the elevator, and like the Flyers healthy scratches kind of guys, like Mark Stahl gets in the elevator with us, and we're like, and so yeah, we're kind of going down the elevator because we have to go get ready to do the post game press conference and stuff like that. And so we're all kind of just watching by the TV when we got down to see what was going on because it was like nail biting. But yeah, the Flames ended up pulling it off 4-3. It was a good game. I don't know how much of the Flames you saw lately, but we can talk about that real quick. Obviously, there was a bit of a Bronx cheer when Markstrom made the save the last two games. He allowed the first shot of the game in, and so when he made a save, the fans kind of gave him a good old cheer. But he played really good. Nazem Kadri played good. I thought Jonathan Huberdeau looked very more engaged, back to where he should be, and I got to see him a lot in Florida. And that was kind of nice to see. And Dennis Gilbert had an amazing game, and Mangiapane had 3 assists. So there was a lot of great wins all the way around. But from what you've seen from afar, your thoughts on the recent play of the Calgary Flames? They're still out of a playoff picture, but they got a big road trip here coming up.
Just you know what? It's hard to say. I mean, obviously, everybody with what went on with Daryl last year, everybody was like, "Well, where do you see this group this year with this? With all the pressure gone with the coach, and if it wasn't for Markstrom early, they would have been in big trouble.
Yeah,
really in big trouble. And it's a tough one. There's a lot of obviously Craig's. It's his first kick the can as a general manager, and he's probably got some thoughts and feelings. And then you go through that whole period in the off season that whether your top guys really do want to stay, and it's such a great hockey city. But it's just so many moving pieces there with all those UFAs. And I think that seeing the lack of production on a consistent basis, that you've really got to start looking at the opportunity to move some of these pieces out and start with some fresh looks. And I don't think really there's anybody. There's a couple guys you want to keep it. I mean, it's almost like it's that point. Some guys are very difficult to trade with their contracts and stuff, but I'd be looking under every rock possible to see if there's a deal possible with the Montreal Canadiens for Huberdeau. I'd be looking at, obviously you've got these UFAs, like I think Blake Hanifin's a UFA. I mean, Zadorov, but they've already moved on from.
Hanev's an F.
Hanev for me is the one that.
Lindholm too.
Yeah, Lindholm, another great player, but the hard part is the teams that are looking for these pieces are so up against the salary cap. And from what I've heard, and rightfully so, Craig is asking for like everybody has this big thing about Toronto and Calgary. There's a match made in heaven with regards to players that obviously Brad would know really well and who he covets. But I got to think that the Calgary Flames, that's probably their least likely dance partner, because you just don't. There's always that friction of, if you're Craig, do you really want to possibly lose a trade or make your ex-general manager in another Canadian hockey market get his wishes? I mean, I would think that the price is probably got an extra cherry on top if you're talking to the Toronto Maple Leafs about one of those prospects. And again, and I get back, I'm going to pat the Los Angeles Kings, and it's not, I mean, I haven't been there for quite a while, but I know when I was there, one of the things I took great pride in was really on top of the great players we had and that we were really home built. Was the ability to put a lot of just fill the shelves with prospects, and not just your high level guys, your first rounders. Like we had like 6 or 7 guys we took in the 6th or 7th round that have played over 500 games in the league. Like Matty Roy's doing it now. Even there's some guys that we didn't think we kind of thought we missed on, like Mikey Eismont and Johnny Brodzinski, that are finding homes in other places. So to be able to do that, and then Mark Yannetti completely and his staff have continued to do it. And you start to look what you can do and what you can add when you get a guy like Faber, right? Who this guy's potential rookie of the year candidate. And I mean, they move him and they bring in a guy like Fiala, right? And Faber would be anybody's. He's got a chance to be a legitimate number one, which is not. It's kind of unheard of anymore having a number one. And then you know, whether you like the trade or you don't like the trade, it probably has worked out for both. I mean, Dubois is not really, you know, I mean, as a third line center, you're just going crazy. You're happy, but he's not really playing up to his standards. But I mean, Gabe Vilardi, you know, Alex Iafallo, Casper Capri, you've got all that draft arsenal and all those extra assets that you can turn into a bona fide NHL player. And they still, like, you look at that team, how hard they are to play against. They're probably a little concerned about the structure, their goaltending, as far as, you know, is Cam Talbot the guy, is Phoenix Copley the guy? But I mean, you look on their back end and you talk about right shot defensemen, and then it allows them to go out and get a guy like Gavrikov that's a perfect fit, you know, but their best prospect isn't even on the team.
Yeah.
Grant Clark is playing like this guy's going to be a star. And I mean, these guys they're not even able to make the team yet. So you see a team like that, and then you, again, respectfully, you go to Calgary. And I mean, I know last year Darryl really put up a wall with regards to guys like Phillips and Pelletier and Wolf coming up, because he didn't see them as legitimate NHL prospects. And when you have that issue, it's hard if you don't believe in you. I mean, other teams, you've got to have a dance partner that loves you. Everybody loves their own prospects. That's another problem.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the other teams don't feel as strongly about what you have in your holster to deal. And again, I look at Toronto as a team that I think Kyle really left the shelves, I mean, empty. I mean, whether or not, I mean, they're a well-oiled machine based on, you know, the Matthews and the guys that they picked in the top five. I mean, Marners and, you know, Nylanders, and Morgan Riley was picked when Brian Burke was there. But I mean, you look at their assets and you're like, okay, is there anybody coming up? Like Robertson looks like he's fitting in okay as a good third line player, but you don't see any stud coming up in the back end. I mean, you probably got to be really happy with the fact that, you know, I think a lot of people, including myself, thought Easton Cowan was taken pretty high, and he looks like he's the real deal. I mean,
yeah,
as far as being a guy that's going to be able to play in the bottom six and be really effective. And I guess Minton's another guy. But after that, is there really anybody that gets you? Like, if you're trying to deal on the Leaf side of things, that you've got to move out salary. You're probably looking now at thinking the one part you were really excited about was Samsonov coming in for another year after the year he had, and now he's gone. You know, he went full Jack Campbell, and it's like the mental side of things took over, and the puck it looks like the size of a pea getting shot at him.
Yeah.
With his confidence gone. And that's a tough thing. That's a problem in Toronto that you just didn't expect to see, was that kind of goaltending. And then you get all excited that Wall's starting to look good, and then he blows his knee out. So I don't even know the guy, Hildeby or whatever the guy's name is. They called some guy up, but it could
Dennis Hildeby.
I had to Google him. So
he's had good numbers last year, and his numbers are pretty good this year. So
and you never know with something like that. It just happens. It's like we talk about. It's like right now what's going on in the NFL. You're like, you got to look at who's quarterbacking for this team today, and then all of a sudden they go on these little runs, and it reminds me very much of these goalies that somehow come in and, you know, Copley did it last year. I mean, obviously it caught up with them this year, but I mean, you come in and you're like looking at this guy, like, this guy couldn't play for Arizona or whatever, and he's like 14-2.
Yeah,
it's a lot to do with the structure that your team has. So it'll be interesting. The hardest part doing it in Toronto, like, it's one thing to do it on a team like, you know, you see the kid Kochichev that's doing it coming in Carolina, because they're such a structured defensive team. You would think that, you know, like teams like that have those great blue lines, like Aiden Hill can go in Vegas, and these guys can go in Vegas because they're such an incredible defensive core. And then you look at a team like Toronto that, I mean, obviously I don't think they're thrilled with their back end and the balance they have there. So having a goalie that makes the saves that count matters incredibly huge when you don't have a great defensive core.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. Like, obviously, I think Tanev would be the guy Tree would want. That would
100%.
That would solidify what he needs in the back end, and then you're probably a little bit more your confidence in going
I'd
forward.
almost overpay for Tanev if I was Toronto, because
Yeah,
I mean, obviously
you could re-sign him, is what.
you're gonna re-sign him, right?
Yeah,
If you're
yeah,
comfortable with that, then it's well, you just can't do it for a rental.
no, no. So as long as he knows that you can get him done for an extension, maybe it's a 2-year extension or a
I'd
3.
be going crazy. I'd be going after Markstrom and Tanev, and I'd give up any assets
Yeah,
they wanted, because you've got to again. And I had this disagree, not so much a disagreement, but you could have these guys for a long time, whether they sign back Nylander and stuff like that.
yeah,
There still is a window where, Mark Giordano's only going to be Mark Giordano for a couple more years. He's still got to be careful with his minutes and stuff like that. But you've got some older players that, on top of the great young ones, I mean, they seem like they've been around forever, with the Matthews and the Mars. You got to capitalize on this window where they're all there for sure. Like, you
yeah,
don't know what Mitch Marner's going to ask for in his next deal. I mean, you're hoping you can get Nylander signed, but there's a window where these guys are in their prime, and you've got questions on the back end and questions in goal, which is not a good mix. So to overpay, whether even financially it could work, you'd obviously have to bring in like a Markstrom or a Tanev, that you've taken away those question marks at such key areas while your top young guys are still in their prime. It's critical. I mean, I was always that way. I know that's how Drew Doughty was so frustrated that, and Cope, like 3 or 4 of their top years of their prime was rebuilding, right? And that's a tough thing when you've got superstars. And in fairness, good on LA, because they're back in NHL Stanley Cup contendership, and Doughty and Kopitar still look like studs. But you got to be really careful about burning out your top guys' best years with holes everywhere.
They can't beat the Oilers right now, though. Futes, what's your thought process on that? It was another game where the Kings dominated to start, and then the Oilers ended up finding a way to pull that one out. I know it's a shootout, so
you've got elite players like that. I mean, like, you could say that was a bad goal, or you can just say, oh my God, McDavid, like he drops his shoulder for 2 seconds, and all of a sudden, the water bottle's off the top of the net. So
yeah,
when you've got, I don't look at it like, I think this LA team would give this Oilers team fits in a playoff series. In one game, anything can happen. But when you've got 2 players, I mean, there's more than 2 players, but when Draisaitl and McDavid are going, it kind of makes, it doesn't matter who's on the other side to a certain extent when they've got it going. As long as you've got a semblance of, like, I thought Edmonton played one of their more structured games, and the goaltending didn't kill them. That's got to happen in order for them to like, Todd's got LA playing a real strong. It's going to be hard to play against in the playoffs. And again, it's a grind. Like, they're not going to get into 9-7 games. Like, every game's going to be a grind, like 4th and inches or 3rd and inches if you're in the Canadian Football League. But it's like, it's a battle, and you could see it in Edmonton. Edmonton was, it still came down to a shootout. So
yeah,
that doesn't, but I mean, I'll tell you, there's some matchups. And even if you look at some of the teams that are on the outside looking in, like Vegas is going through a tough spot, but you got to think they really haven't had a chance. They haven't even filled their full roster yet. I mean, you think about these teams that are, wow, we're missing this guy. I mean, there's big pieces that have been out of the Vegas lineup all year long. Like, I mean, I think Theodore's out now, but if they get healthy, they're going to be tough. But then you're starting to see teams like Seattle, when you look at who's below the cut line, starting to play better hockey.
Yeah.
Edmonton, everybody's just kind of waiting for that. They quietly just keep creeping up. Like, I don't think there's too many people that expect them to be on the outside looking in, but you've got to take a team and go, okay, who's coming back to the pack? And I mean, obviously it's an easy thing to say Arizona, but I mean, they've been consistent, and you never know. There's a team that lightning in a bottle, but if anybody has the assets and the cap space to do something to get better at the trade deadline, it's a team like that.
Yeah.
If they want to give up some of that draft capital, and they do have an opportunity to get better, and it'll be interesting. I just am amazed. And in the East, you look and you still see teams like I'm wondering how some teams are still where they are. I love the work ethic on Philly. I guess, as Tortorella says, we're not very good, but we have balls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Torts. That's great. Way to break your team down into balls. But it'll be interesting. Pittsburgh for me is like the one that I look at and go. And there's part of me when I look at what the Leafs are left that I don't really want to get too many party horns out for Kyle to have success with Pittsburgh, but it is what it is. I mean, that team, when you see them below the cut line, the way Crosby's playing, that one's tough to fathom as well.
Yeah. It's very interesting for sure. So, yeah, I don't know where things go with the Penguins. They're going to have to do some kind of work, and
Coach Rupper here from Two Mutts. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Now let's grab a knee. Have I got a deal for you? We have teamed up with Manscaped, and we can save you some big-time coin this upcoming NHL season. Guys, are your sticks and pucks getting hairy in the corners? And gals, is your goalie still using horsehair Coopers? Well, let's wake up! Use the code 2MUTS to save 20% plus free shipping on Manscaped products. Listen, we all love to score, and we all want to win the cup. Why not do it on a fresh, clean, smooth sheet of ice? That way we all win. Manscaped is the only way to go. Again, the code is 2MUTS to save 20% plus free shipping on Manscaped products. Now let's bring it in. Manscaped on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Our NHL News and Notes segment is brought to you by Sheena Boychuk. Yes, you heard that last name right. That's Sheena Boychuk. As a licensed realtor, Sheena has you covered to buy and sell your home in this hot market. She also offers home consulting services to help you upgrade your living space. Check her website out at sheenaboychuk.com and tell her the Two Mutts podcast sent you. Realty by Design, your design approach to real estate.
This public service announcement is brought to you by our friends at CDN. Here's a crazy thought. Not all teamwear needs a team logo. Stand out in the crowd and rep your team colors with one of CDN's hockey hats. Listen, these hats are phenomenal. We just got ours a little while ago, and we've been wearing them nonstop. You know when you find a hat you love and you just can't take it off? Yep, that's how we feel with our CDN hat. Every time we wear it out, we get asked, where did you get that hat? I know what you're thinking. How can I get one? Cue the details. Shop online 24/7 at www.wearecdn.ca and use the promo code 2MUTS for 15% off your order. Again, that's www.wearecdn.ca to get your new favorite hat and use the discount code 2MUTS at checkout for 15% off your order. Now back to the show.
All right. Well, we just learned that the mascot of the podcast is a huge Penguins fan, as Futes just said. So just took everything out. Just
2 Mutts to another, to 2 Mutts to another level.
Wiped out the whole board.
I've never had a podcast crashed by a vicious animal attack.
Yes. He dropped his toy and he didn't know which way to go.
He didn't know Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Bruno boy will make sure that never happens again. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens with the Penguins for sure. There's a lot there. You covered a lot and a lot of things. One of the things, we'll go to the New Jersey Devils here. We'll kind of talk about their situation, but before we get there, let's talk about Tyler Toffoli. He's got 15 goals on the year. He's on pace to, surpass what he had last year. He's having an amazing year with the Devils. And he was here December 10th, and he got to meet young Illia again, and just a really good moment for both those, for Tyler and young Illia. But when you met Tyler Futes, did you kind of see a lot of this in his demeanor? Like, from what I understand, the family's really good people, so it's not shocking. But he kind of takes the time out of his schedule to come up, have a conversation, sign some autographs, take some pictures. Can you kind of talk about the person Tyler is, and maybe some other stories, but this story is a pretty cool one too?
Well, he's just it's a great rags to riches stories. I mean, just a very humble background. I mean, his dad was a trainer on his team, and Ty, as I said, I think the junior Canadians at the time, everybody was going in to watch John McFarland, and I just every time I went, I couldn't help. Like when my coach Dan Cameron was coaching him, and just all he did was score goals, and he was quiet, like really quiet. Like anybody that scores goals like that much, I think he had like 60 or 70 goals. Like you've got to be confident, right? There's one thing, but you got no ounce of, like when he was with the Ottawa 67s, I remember when McFarland was getting traded, I said, you make sure that he knows as soon as he walks through the door that this is Tyler Toffoli's team, right? You're not going to drop in back. You're not going to be the guy playing the triangle in the Saturday Night Live skit. This is your band, and you make sure that he understands that. And as Tyler started to get more confidence, and I think because you have to be a little bit cocky, and once he started, it was more of his body transition. Because everybody knocked his skating that he couldn't make, but once he put in the work in the gym and his body started to blend in. And I mean, as I said, I used to joke about him and Jordan Nolan. Like you could tell when, like, if they ever went shirts and skins or something, that he'd just be devastated if he was a skin, because all these other guys walking around jacked, and then Tyler put in the work and you couldn't get a shirt on him. The guy was walking around without a shirt. The rest was like just so confident in himself. And obviously you can tell when he's in a great space mentally. And he's got a wonderful wife and cat, and you can tell he really enjoys where he is. Like you can tell he's enjoying New Jersey. I saw a great video of him with him playing. You forget about the bomb when you win a championship, but Jonathan Quick had them all over for Christmas, and Ty was in net. They were playing mini sticks with all the kids downstairs, and Quickie and Ty was in net in one end, and it was pretty cool to see these guys bond over Christmas. But it's also a certain amount of chemistry, right? You can put people in certain aspects. Like they had match chemistry. I remember when Daryl put the 70s line together for 2014, and Pearson, Carter, and Toffoli just took off to another level. And you can clearly see the chemistry with him and Hughes. And you think he's got 15 if you take away, and I think Hughes was gone for 3 weeks, where Ty continued to put the puck in the net. But if you kept Hughes in that lineup, he's probably closer to 20 goals by now.
Yeah.
And there's a comfort level there. And he's got that championship pedigree, which helps a young team like that, because you can see how they look up to him. You can see the confidence he has. You can see when he goes into certain places, like he goes into Ottawa where he played junior and he scores, and he goes into, he's scoring in big places too. And he's a guy that's consistently scored in the playoffs. But again, you look at a team that's just chomping at the bit to get over that line and be competitive, and they've got, you never know what's coming out of the net every night, right? So for me, New Jersey, until they get a goaltender that they can count on every night, it's going to be everybody left scratching their heads about how good they could possibly be.
Would you pay the assets to go get John Gibson out of Anaheim to bring
100%? 100%. I mean, and you got to stay away from it. But again, not having it in front of me, you got to think that because they've done so well with what they've added to their homegrown talent, through the draft, and then obviously the big trade with San Jose last year. But yeah, I'd figure out certainly my first round pick and stuff like that. And I know it's going to be a good pick, but I have to think, I know in talking to Gibson's agent, just kind of picking away at some things, he's got a no trade clause. But I got to think, playing in an American market, close to New York on a team that's up and coming would be huge for him. So that would be the guy I would target without question. And I think he would be the guy that immediately puts people on that, wow, I don't want to play New Jersey. And again, I think that thrusts them into that above the cut line. And then you just don't want to play a team like that in the playoffs. I think Gibson, in the right situation, still has enough left in the tank to do what he was doing to teams like us in LA, driving us fits in the playoffs and stuff like that. So, and I think it's a great fit, because I think Anaheim is still, again, you've got John Gibson with probably 2 or 3 more great years left on a team that's rebuilding. So and they've got I think they've got a young goaltender in Anaheim too that seems to be the real deal. So it's not
Lucas Doscal.
Yeah, it's not like they're leaving the asset bank completely.
No, Jeff Glass, a good friend of ours, goalie coach with the San Diego Gall. He's done a good job with Lucas in getting him to NHL ready. So great job for Glasser there and Lucas as well. And yeah, Gibson just had him and his wife just had I think their second child. So those things usually do play in a factor if there is a trade, maybe. But we'll see if where that's at down the road. But yeah, it's and I don't know Lindy Ruff's job. I know there's been some conversation that he could be on the hot seat, but I do think that he somewhat survives this because I don't think it's all on him, and I do think Fitzgerald kind of would really understand that too from a guy that's played.
The only thing I'd say with I would think there's going to be some people. There's been a lot of managers that have maintained their safety in spite of some pretty disappointments, and I would think that that's probably going to change dramatically if some teams don't get on a bit of a roll here. But it's one thing to change a coach, but you got to have the right guy available to come in. Right?
Yeah. Well, they got Greener on the bench, right? So Travis Green.
Well, there's a perfect example of a guy that's ready to roll. So
yeah. So if there was a case to be made on a switch there, that would be the guy they are probably in there because he's not in there as an assistant coach. He's there as an associate coach, which is still might be the same situation. But Team Canada Futes, big upset loss here. Czechia takes them out. We'll move over to some junior hair talk and go some scouting conversations. But just not a tournament that they looked really their best at. They looked like they had some moments of great flash, but over the years, Canada's pulled out some of these wins where maybe they shouldn't have won, and today's a day where maybe they should have won, but they didn't win, and the bounce went the other way. Czechia beats them 3-2, a big upset. Where are you at here? I don't think we need a summit. I think we're okay, but just one of those things that maybe these other countries are now just kind of catching up slowly, and it's healthy for the tournament to have stuff like this too. Probably not.
I would think so. I mean, I saw the highlights. Again, I love the World Juniors. It's the first time in age. Because usually in my 26s, the 26th is when my holidays end and I'm flying wherever the World Juniors are. And I obviously a huge fan of it. I watch it. But I think you just nailed it. You watch some of these games against some of these teams like a Germany or teams that used to be just easy cakewalks, and the sport is really, you just look at the top scorers in the National Hockey League. It's not just a Canadian dominated sport anymore. And when it comes down to inches, anything like that can happen. You run into a hot goaltender. It wasn't like they were, hemmed into their zone or anything. The thing, you watch that puck hit a stick, I think maybe 2 sticks and then an inside post before it goes in. That's a tough one. And I just think there's so much expectations, and rightfully so, because, we are, it's like when we talk about that next, we can't wait to have Canada play against the US and the next best on best. And everybody has their fun putting together the lineups. And there's always somebody that's left off a team that you kind of shake your head. And it doesn't mean they're all going to be the best NHL players either. It's hilarious. Like, look, you talked about Toff.
Yeah.
He got cut. There's a lot of great players that get cut from that team that go on to be great. They use it as a burn factor to go on to become great NHLers. And you don't want to see them ever fail. It was painful for me. It was more painful watching the parents and the crowd. It was like,
that was tough. Yeah.
They all have, because you realize how much they care about their kids and stuff. And there is part of that. Sometimes they jump ahead too, because they've seen in the past when the cameras are on and the kids win the gold, and they're going to get their moment in the sun as well. Because everything that happens, they immediately pan to the kid's family. So, to go to Rousseau's family after something like that, to me is a bit, they got to do it, but come on.
Yeah.
It wasn't the kid. It wasn't like the kid let in a bouncer from, it hit everything in the building before it went in. And then to show his family and with their heads buried in their head is a little, I guess it's great TV or if you've got issues, but I'm not a big fan of that, but
no.
Hopefully they can get through it. And the ones that mentally grind it out and use it to build on, it's special. I remember for me, from an NHL standpoint, it's a huge factor if you can see your kids win together. I still remember, I think it was 2008, just thrilled because on the blue line, right? On the blue line, listening to the national anthem after they won the gold, we had Bernier, Jonathan Bernier, Wayne Simmons, Thomas Hickey, and Drew Doughty standing beside each other, because you start to see your future learning how to win together, right? That kind of stuff gets you excited. And then you look on the other blue line, and I think we had Oscar Moeller, who was one of our he was captain of Sweden. So you get a little moments of pride. I remember Oscar Moeller taking the first face-off with Thomas Hickey, and you're like, wow, here's the gold medal game. We got 2 of our draft picks, both captains, going at it in the World Junior Final. I mean, Thomas Hickey ended up playing. I mean, Thomas is doing a great job on TV, but he almost played 1,000, but it looked like a massive. People were booing when we took him at the, and in fairness, probably went a little bit high, but what a great career and what a great kid. But yeah, I think that's part of it. When you see your guys win at that level, and then you see the great ones that, when you see like I coached the 85 group. So I had like Richards and Carter, Perry. I mean, we were ridiculous. I had Biss was my best defenseman. That was probably problematic.
Yeah, we talked about that on that episode. Yeah.
But he doesn't find that a problem. But but anyways, but you think, and then you look at that, how could you not win? That was one of those team candidates. And then you look at, because Phaneuf, Seabrook, they were all defensemen from the Western team. But when you put them all together in that team that played in Grand Forks and throw Sidney Crosby into the mix and Bergeron, you're like, okay.
Here we
I
go.
look at that team and I just go, wow, like not even close. Like as far as a team that it's not just they graduated, but when they go back and look at, okay, well, he won a World Juniors, and then he won a couple Olympic golds, and then he's won a couple Stanley Cups and a couple it's like all of them. They were like such incredibly gifted careers, and it all started, winning together, that group.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool stuff. Great stories. But again, you never like to see, I mean, probably the people I feel most sorry for are the TSN staff.
Yeah. I was just,
I'll tell you, I'm not, I won't be getting up at 6:30 to watch the Finns in Latvia or whoever else is battling for.
I think our friend O-Dog is off the hook now. So,
oh my God.
He was only doing
Gord Miller, who's a good friend, and Mike Johnson, who's known for calling us golden goals. He's probably he'll have trouble getting the pipes ready for the next round of action in the semis.
Yeah. So James Duthie, Cheryl Pounder, and also Bob McKenzie will take over the panel duties. I don't know how many dealings you had with Dennis Bayak through your travels of the NHL, but just now he just finished his last game calling. He is now retired. He just called the USA Latvia game. Just kind of I would say a very iconic, like very legendary voice in hockey.
Yeah, 100%. There's certain guys that you hear their voice and you immediately think, whether it's like for me, like with Chris Cuthbert's my personal favorite, right? And I mean, I kind of get spoiled with Joe Bowen and Ralphie at the radio here and stuff like that with the Leafs, but there's just certain voices that are so iconic when it comes to, and as I said, there's so many great ones, but for me, when I hear Chris Cuthbert, it just, first of all, I don't know why I think CFL, which I'm not even like a big CFL guy, but I knew that voice was iconic there, and then hockey to another level. And now it's like, I think his son or something, I'm doing a thing on the fan with his son and Elish today. So, I mean, they're obviously, these people take great bloodlines coming along. I mean, Mackenzie's kid and stuff like that, but it's amazing. And I also think when we won in 2012 and 2000, I think Chris was like, we were something like 8 or 9-0 in games that he called. So we just knew as soon as I saw him walk in the building, I was like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
And we had that, he knew because I told him what his record was when he called our games, but special guy, that's for sure.
It's funny because Michael Baxton and I were talking last night, and he goes, "What's the record now?" And my record in my last 60, we'll go back to the last 16 because I've seen him play a lot live, but my last 16 games watching Michael Baxton play live, I'm 15-0-1.
Well,
So
that's an easy for me. And two, well, now you got a press pass, which you're fine, but Michael Backlund would just be handing his season tickets over to you.
yeah.
Pretty much
So
no
one
brainer.
thing I learned,
I'm not an analytics guy, but that one's a pretty easy math assignment.
yeah.
You should be in the building now.
Yeah, we were kind of having a good laugh about that. And one thing I did learn, you can't be a fan in press row. So
yeah, you have to be. I was doing a little tour around the Ontario Hockey League there, and I found the same thing. Like my buddy James Richmond closes Mississauga, and I was trying to keep because I'm not associated with a team. Every time Mississauga scored, I was kind of like fanning out, cheering for my buddy's team, and I realized that you can't do that.
It's funny because I was sitting next to this is why I want to transition over to the scouting part, but I'll finish the story. Obviously, the one side is all media guys, and then I was in the last seat where all the scouts would start sitting. So I was sitting next to a scout, and then when Backlund scored, and I kind of cheered, he looked at me. He's like, "You can't do that up here." Like whispered it to me. I was like, "Yeah."
Well, my two biggest, like I got that thing down more because I initially was like because you've got your they keep, especially in the playoffs, they always go to the management box, and if you're like, I don't want to ever be like when like Pierre Dorian and Kyle whistling throwing water balls around like that, but you got to keep your natural emotions. But I will, and the two biggest for me where I just couldn't control myself, and it was funny. Well, obviously the one because it ended the season, but were both scored by Alec Martinez. We scored in double overtime against the Rangers, the Chicago Blackhawks in Chicago in Game 7, and it was very similar to the goal that Czech scored. Like it was one of those ones that you could have. It felt like a time warp. The puck as it traveled towards the net and found its way in. And Dean Lombardi and he almost clotheslined me out of the press box celebrating that goal, and then Marty's goal to win the Stanley Cup against the Rangers again, with the famous where Lundqvist lying in net there and Marty doing the crazy hands.
Yeah.
When they showed our box afterwards, it was like talk about euphoria. As much as the guys were going crazy on the ice, we were just losing our minds up in the management box. So
we'll finish up on this transition over scouting. I was listening to Merrick and Friedman. They had McCrimmon on the recent episode, and he talked about that they seen Ivan Barbashev about 45 times last year before they made the trade to get him. And the question was, Elliot is kind of hearing through, obviously he's the most connected guy in the industry, that teams are going to scale back scouting. And your kind of thought process on that, like McCrimmon said that's not what his organization is going to do, but do you think in terms of what would that look like? Is that less viewings in person and just now we're always going to go to the video instead? Like where are you at with scouting now in pro hockey, junior hockey, and what kind of were the things that you like to go and look for? What are the top 3 things that kind of trigger?
Well, you can't. First of all, live viewings are critical, particularly at the amateur level. I think that, and I think pro scouts. And I remind me to come back to pro scouts because I've got a craw to pick there. I just, you got to be real careful with this, just analytics video. You lose a lot of different things on the video. The quality of the video in certain places, and you can go from looking like you're watching a pristine Steven Spielberg production to you go to another one, it looks like your Blair Witch Project. So you're missing out on different things. You have to catch live viewings, but I'd be really scared about it at the amateur level. For me, meeting people and learning about the kids, you can see so much about, but I think that was one of the things that the kids that have made me look the best, or my organizations look the best, are kids that you just got to know, like you said, like Toffoli's and Wayne Simmons and Mark Giordano and Curtis McDermott. And they weren't always the best players. And God, I didn't have a clue that Wayne Simmons and Mark Giordano, when I put my backing behind them, I didn't think they were going to play 1,000 games. And one was going to be an NHL All-Star, one was going to be a Norris Trophy winner. I just knew that with their character, that they were never, ever going to make me look bad or let me down with what they brought. And if they were going to fail, it was going to get run over by a train on a train track. It was not going to be due to self-inflicted wins or laziness. Yeah. And those are things you knew by getting to know people in person and being in front of them. Now my cry with pro scouting is, if it does happen, they're their own worst enemies, because I think for me, the amount of money that goes into a night of a pro scout being at a game or an amateur scout, where you get probably a flight, you get per diem, you get a big dinner, you've got a great suit on, you're going to a game, you get these guys it looks like you've probably seen it. You'll see it more now. Some of these guys, it looks like they've got Monopoly in front of them. They've got their lineups out with their highlighters through. It's magical. And then you get to like every time, now the rinks are so good that every time something happens, you watch all the pro scouts look back and they watch it on TV.
Yes.
Right. They've got access to.
Well, they had all their laptops. So that what was happening that night was they had their notepads and then they had their laptops. So they were going back and like even to the intermission, like there's like.
Yeah, but if you're at whatever, if you're in a Czech rink in the middle of nowhere and you're not focused on a game and something happens, you can't back up and go and see 8 different replays of it to see something you might miss. Right. And then when there's a time after a goal, so you can go down and you can check your notes or you can write down the time because you're going to be able to go back and check it on video. Right. And then if I'm an owner, and this is where Dean Lombardi, and I understand it, he had a rule that you had to stay to the end of the game, no matter what. Right. When you think about your thing, and I mean, I understand there's traffic and you want to beat the fans out. But for me, if I'm an owner spending all this money and looking for reasons to not spend money, and I look up and it looks like someone's pulled the fire alarm and everybody's gone with 6 minutes left in the game or 5 minutes left in the game, in spite of the score, you're only allowing someone to put into their say, why are we paying for this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why are we paying all this money for this privilege and priority and 5 minutes left in the game to beat traffic? It's empty. And Dean Lombardi always had a rule that you couldn't leave the building, and he made it easy. It was for pro scouts as well. An amateur, it was easy because he said you had to go interview a kid after every game. So it was never even in your mindset that you were leaving because you knew you had to go down and talk to a kid after every game, which took it out of I remember Jack Ferrara, who I love to death. He was an old school guy, and he'd be like, let's get the out of here. Look at it. It's 5-1. Let's get the. And I'd be like, I just would be like, we, our boss has the rules. That's great. You can say it, but we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We're going down. We're going to meet a player after a game, or we got to talk to one of our draft picks. So I think pro scouts in general, when you're saying we don't need, video and analytics is your biggest enemy to keep from you keeping your job, when of course now analytics is going to be a part of things. It's the way it is. But if you're relying on a TV screen at a live event to write your report and then leaving early, why would you not, if you're an owner, say there's an area we can scale back on? They're just watching TV anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So that's and it's not because these guys are so passionate about it and they love their jobs. But if you do it, then stick around and realize, and me being on the outside, I'll tell them. Like, and there's guys that are working right now that respectfully couldn't carry a torch to what I brought to the table.
Yeah.
And that's not being, I worked at it to it, and I didn't leave early. I didn't cheat anybody. But if you're there and you're getting paid, don't cheat it. Don't leave early. Don't take shortcuts because you're just giving ownership, who obviously is looking at any chance to save money. And if you you're an owner and you look down and you got whatever 10 pro scouts, and you go in you watch closely and they're leaving with 7-8 minutes or whatever left in the game, it gives them the opportunity to question the value of that position.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's finish up on that. That's very well said. Very well spoken words for you here on the 2 Months podcast, about 45 minutes long. So again, Futes, appreciate the time. It's nice to connect with you here in the new year, and hopefully get a chance to finally see you here soon. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to make my way out east, but
well, I don't. Maybe I'll have to just find a way to go watch you and your little new gig there up in the. Yeah. You will find out. Be careful. One thing. It's much as it's unusual to get attacked by a dog in the middle of a podcast. Be careful in Calgary, because I don't care who you are. If you stand up too early for the national anthem, you're going to get concussed by that thing.
Oh yeah.
Mark, I've seen so many people literally stand up for their national anthem or in between their missions, and no matter it's there, you crank your melon off that bar and it's dizzy time. It's dizzy time. So you have to be careful because that's the only one they say they need a new building in Calgary. When they build a new building, make sure they don't have that bench press thing above your press box.
And I'm tall. I'm 6'3", so
you're due. You're gonna have to wear one of your work hard hats
exactly
to the rink to save your head.
Yeah, I'll have to ask Peter Hanlon if I can bring him my pocket, so get away from those headbangers. So, but yeah, for sure. So thanks to you. We'll reconnect very soon, Futes.
Good,
have fun, and all the best to you in the new year and to your family.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Take care.